I think we are live now. You never know. That beginning bit's weird.
Yeah.
Friends, it is so nice for me to have an opportunity to spend some time with this beautiful being called Cameron Allen here at StarryTelling Hours today. Cameron, how in the heavens are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I actually just went outside because it's been kind of cloudy here a little bit in Memphis, and the sun came out super bright. So I like ran down to the park real quick and took my sandbag with me and just did a little movement. And so that was really, really nice. It was a treat because I recently, during all the mayhem that's been going on in the mutable signs, I like injured my knee recently
Mm,
a little
mm.
bit. And I like put my foot through glass and like got bee sting on my like very tip of my finger. So I just had to like relax a lot lately. So I like am excited that I'm like back at it because I'm back addicted to like movement and like exercise. Yeah.
Oh, that stopped for you at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever stopped in like a normal sense, but like my version of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I
Meaning
think
you
I have like gotten way more meticulous about like the process of movement instead of being a bro in the gym kind of vibe, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
When were you a bro in the gym? That's never really felt like your vibe to me. Oh, you were a football player though, right?
Right, exactly. In high school and then in college, in the beginning of college, I was very much so that playing football. Yeah, so I was a bro in the gym, hardcore there, you know. No neck. I had the no neck thing going on, but also very stiff. Yeah.
Oh, because you have like
Holding up my ego
receiver.
and my identity with my biceps.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've known you to have a good relationship with your biceps still though.
Definitely,
You got
definitely.
like cornerback body or receiver body, but if you had no neck, what position were you playing? Were you a linebacker or something?
Yeah, linebacker, defensive end, tight end. Yeah, back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then probably different size and as that levels up towards the college ranks and those things. And then somehow you stumbled into this weird mystical thing. So yeah, how long have you been dating the goddess Astrology, Cameron?
Hmm. In proper terms, I would say it's been since like 2016. But looking back, even back to the days when I was playing football and like just doing college things, you know, a lot of times I would like be out at parties and then randomly people would just like find me out in the field just staring at the stars.
Mm.
And so I'm under the assumption that I was put under the spell long ago before I even knew it. But
Mm.
when I realized I was into astrology, it was like 2016, you know, and in college, there were some little hints of it too when it was like studying Carl Jung, because I was getting a psychology degree back then and like kind of getting into like the psychological perspective of the planets, but I wasn't really necessarily into the planets proper, just like into the psychology. So, you know, it was kind of like then and 2016 were like the two moments that stick out the most to me when I got put under the spell that I'm still under gladly.
Right, voluntarily. I
Yeah.
imagine when people caught you out there staring at the stars, they probably also shared about their problems and those kinds of things. And that you've always been
Yeah, actually,
yeah.
that's super accurate. You know, like people would, like when we would go out, there would be two different modes of Cameron. It would be like party Cameron, or it would be like very like I'm sipping and I'm reflective Cameron. And people did actually come to me all the time
Yeah.
with issues that they had going on while I was like under the stars, just kind of being like reflective. And yeah, so that's very astute of you to like point out because that really was a thing, you know. They literally used to call me like Papa Cam,
Mm.
and they would be like, "Oh, he's in Papa Cam mode," when I would just be like out and just like pondering reality. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot to ponder.
yeah, indeed it is.
Yeah. And football's thick too. But maybe we'll stay with astrology for this particular crowd here today. So yeah, when I invited Cameron and I were just like on the email a minute ago talking about a talk that he's going to deliver for NCGR San Francisco, which I don't talk about much here, but I'm the president of the NCGR chapter here in the Bay Area of California. And Cameron's going to do a talk for us in October.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So y'all check that out. NCGR, National Council. Wait, what is it? National Council of Geocosmic Research, which just sounds amazing. ncgrsanfrancisco.org. We have presenters every month, and typically it's free by Zoom. And so if you don't know about it, come on in. Oh, I see Winter here. Winter's on our board as well. So anyway, Cameron and I were talking about that, and so I invited him here. And then just instantly, as soon as he said yes, I was like, oh, this is meant to be called Cameron Allen and the Caduceus Staff. So we're going to see where that leads us. Yeah. So I want to remember, like, when I met you, we were out with the stars.
Yep.
In Portland, right? It was the Renaissance Medicine Fair or festival that
the Lost Renaissance Medicine Conference. I'll never forget it because only 3 weeks prior to that is when plants really started like talking to me directly. And that was, you were the first astrologer like I met proper and had like a proper drop in with ever. Like, you know, so like that was just like so significant. Just I always reflect on that and just like feel so much gratitude for how things have unfolded through time. Because I don't know how I got there fully and completely, but that was my first like astrology and herbalism kind of infusion. And that was like 2016, 2017. So it was like I was really fresh.
Yeah. Well, new but also old, right? And that's the thing, you know, so a lot of folks who will come to me, like one of the main things that I find myself doing, well, top 10 with clients is saying, oh yes, you are an astrologer. It's like people like they're studying, they're very interested in being an astrologer. They might not like voice that. There's some hesitation to, you know. And one of my tests will, I mean, I see it in the chart, right? But it'll be like, yeah, do people tell you their problems before they tell you their name? And it's like, yes, right. I remember when I first had my first business card as an astrologer, and it was like, wow, it's like, this is like Saturn, because now when I'm in a grocery checkout and somebody starts telling me about how their ex-husband committed suicide or something crazy, I'm like, damn, that's hardcore. And, you know, this is what I do, and give me a call. Right. Instead of just like being in like counselor mode with strangers or whatever, which I'm also sometimes happy to do. But anyway, I remember you and I were like out with Jupiter. And I don't know if I met you outside and like we were just both called out by that big moving star, or if we met inside and said like, go check it out. But I remember just dropping in and be like, wow, this guy's like got big heart. And you were in the, as far as I'm concerned, the right space, and hopefully you are every night. I was out there this morning, just like in awe, you know, of the sky, because that's when the sky opens up and starts speaking to you directly, or here on Earth, and the plants too. So plants and planets have been a huge part of your path, the body and astrology. And I was wondering, because I feel like it's going to like take us to where we need to be. If maybe you just share a little bit about your route in astrology and how you first got called in, and to which paradigms, and where you've been since, because you've been all over the map, and I'm intrigued to kind of hear a little bit of that tale.
Oh yeah, I have been. Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. So like I said, I really was brought to the planets from the plants themselves. And you know, they were telling me go outside and look at the stars, and then they just kept hearing like plant planet, plant planet, plant planet, and I just kept hearing that in my head over and over again. And so I started trying to make just like little connections, and like I don't know. I remember like because I worked at a spiritual supply store at that point, you know, and there was this book. I forget what it is called, but anyway, it's just like it had like the names of plants and then the name of planets, and then it like just literally didn't have anything else, right? So there's just like no explanation. It's just like this planet, and I'll be like, this doesn't make sense to me. So I went online and was kind of just like trying to look for anybody I could find who was talking about it. And I found my teacher, Seja Popham, at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. And maybe within like 3 months after that, I was drinking passion flower tea like over and over again for a few nights. And it said, go to Oregon, or it said, go to Portland, or it said, go to Oregon. That's what it said. It said, go to Oregon. And I woke up in the morning, I just was kind of like, okay, I don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, and I got on Facebook, and the first thing I saw, Lost Renaissance Medicine Conference, Portland, Oregon. And it was the plants and the planets. And I had, let's just say I had not enough money in my account to go. Let's just say that. And immediately I was like, well, this is all like happening. And so like I'm going to this conference and I'm not even gonna think about it. So I was like, I went on Google and I just typed in like how to like raise funds or whatever. And I just like made a GoFundMe. And by the next day I had all the money I needed to go. In one, like in 24-hour period, I was just like, hey, like everybody, y'all know I've been like working on these things. I've been like helping people in the city and I don't have the funds to go to this thing, but I'm being called to go. So I know it's already going to happen and thank you in advance. And so I made the money to go. And then I went there and I met you and I met Judith and I got to meet Saja for the first time, met Matthew Wood. All these people had already been kind of influential in kind of like what I was starting to learn, you know? And while I was there, I had some experiences too as well. They were saying, learn this information and go tell the city. So basically they were saying like learn the connection between astrology and the plants so that I can help the city further. Because before that, like I was helping people in the spiritual supply store, but I wasn't the herbalist Cameron or the astrologer Cameron to anyone yet, you know? But I was like, okay, cool. This is what I'm going to do. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And so that's why this is the only thing that actually makes sense to me. And I don't, and from that day forward, I was sitting in the cedar tree and I like fell asleep in the cedar tree. And it was like, like, get the plants and the planets and go tell the people. From that day forward, I didn't question anything, like at all. Like, even on the days where it was like lines of people and in helping people like for like a 3-hour period straight on Saturday and like going to Whole Foods and being like, oh wow, I don't have enough to like get this salmon. It's not in my budget. Like, and I would just be like, one day it'll come. Like not even questioning it. Never questioning any of it. So anyway, just a little context there. Also around that time, I was starting to like read a little bit of astrology books because I was in the spiritual supply store, of course, and like the books there just weren't like up to par from my perspective, which is like, I don't know, it's like that's a part of me. I'm just like, I have a standard, even though I'm ignorant, you know, it's like really interesting. And so I just was reading different things from all these books, and I was like, no, this isn't it. No, this isn't it. And then again online, I found evolutionary astrology. And so I was like, oh, I'm in evolutionary herbalism. I might as well go into evolutionary astrology and see what's going on here. Got the Jeffrey Wolf Green book, and I like fell in love. And I was like, okay, this is astrology. I was like, I like, this is the astrology. And it was the astrology for me in that moment, right? With all the things that I was doing in a spiritual supply store, working with people in their emotional, psychological complexes. I was just fresh out of working at a trauma, like a facility for youth who have been traumatized too as well. And, you know, evolutionary astrology leans towards being able to hold those kind of experiences or talking about those kind of experiences. And so I got really into evolutionary astrology, into evolutionary herbalism. I started learning more from Judith Hill as well around that time. And it was like really amazing how those two things were like starting to infuse together. And I was like being able to start being a little more technical about medical astrology, but also bringing in the evolutionary astrology to where I didn't have to be so like very accurate and precise, because that wasn't the type of practice that I was trying to do in any way to begin with. I also had a different perspective on reality back then. I was a little more leaning towards the like free will for all kind of energy, you know, before astrology taught me a little more,
Well,
honestly.
got you a plane ticket and that salmon at Whole Foods, if I'm not wrong, right? But yeah, it's intriguing because like the School of Evolutionary Herbalism and Seja Popham, you know, you find him here on YouTube or wherever. He's doing some really profound and amazing work and making a lot of that available. And his book, which is called Evolutionary Herbalism, right, is a great text.
Yeah.
But still, like, it's so far from the paradigm of evolutionary astrology because it tends to be, it's kind of surprised me that like in the medical astrology world, and especially with the herbalists, there's like a really intimate connection to plants. And granted, they're here, you know, and you can sit with them and plant and harvest and have that relationship a little bit more easily, maybe. But like, and then the planets are just like these rulers, and it's this rules that, and this rules that, and this is the chart, and you do this when this, and you know, it's like cool to learn all those rules. And I know our conversation is also going to lead us to some of the traditional astrology that you've studied otherwise, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always been interesting, and I've been knowing actually, I think before that conference, but since then for sure, that like, wow, this whole thing is going to go through such a revolution when the planet people also have an intimate relationship with the planets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have like found your way also to many paradigms of astrology, West and East, I guess we'd say. But so what was it that first brought you to, I think, study in England? Yeah. Or at least with English folk.
Wait, so what do you mean?
Didn't you study at STA? Didn't you do like?
I did not. I ended up taking the pathway towards Michael A. Oraculus. Yeah. But even right before that, I started just like, because I was on Twitter and just hearing people, and people had like really strong opinions on Twitter, but like a lot of people seemed like really like informed in a lot of ways that I was just like, huh, like what does that mean? And then it kind of just like led me down to getting all these different resources from the perspective of traditional astrology. And so I just kind of was like touching and going on like little bits and pieces. So I was like, okay, I need to like find a teacher. And so I studied an intensive with Michael A. Bryan over Horary 1, Horary 2. And there was just intensives. They weren't like his whole shebang necessarily, but it was great. And I loved it. And then I went into his foundations program as well. So that was the foundations of Renaissance astrology with Michael. And then I mean, right now I haven't like completed it, but I'm in year 2 also with Austin Coppock. So I had a little Hellenistic there, and then I had some of the Renaissance. And then I also like took a bunch of classes with Gary Caton. And so like I had the alchemical astrology too. And so it's like, or the Hermetic astrology. And so all those things just kind of coalescing together through time with the evolutionary astrology, with my own experiences because when I was first starting working at a spiritual supply store, in that space of time, something just about what I was going through, it was like really like a breaking down of my old paradigm of existence, and really just having things come through me in a way where I just can't explain it, you know, like even to this day, like, I mean, I still have stuff come through me, my gifts, they feel more like turn on, turn off. But back then it was just like, I had to be opened up all the way to be able to know like, this is like possible. And so, and I also, all this was pretty much still in isolation. Like I had teachers, but I was doing it on my own, kind of off to myself. And so all of it was just like easily synthesized. So easily synthesized. And I didn't even, for a long time, I didn't even understand why people were like trying to make differences of these things, when I was like, I can see when it's appropriate for this to be the perspective, or when it's appropriate for that to be the perspective, and how all these things coalesce and come together, or how the medical astrology is and or can be a reflection of the evolutionary astrology, because it's oftentimes emotional, psychological, or how that is a concrete thing that might be happening next year. If I look at your solar return and I do the technique, it's like, I'm like, oh, all these things are matching up. And so it's really about like understanding the spectrum that we have to play with and building relationship with that, instead of it being, we have all free will or we have no free will or whatever. In between, there's just so much that we don't know, that it's just allowed me to be open and humble, and allow for myself to like really like learn maybe where is a wall, or where is a space that I need to just squeeze through, or where is there an opening, and not just looking at the astrology, but like connecting to my heart, connecting to the light in the sky and how it's like being casted down on me. Asking myself, like, am I gazing upon this thing that's gazing upon me? Does it actually see me? Do I actually see it? And the more and more I like went through processes like this, the more I just knew certain things.
Mm.
through the
Yeah.
transmission, right? There's a difference between learning the information of astrology and being initiated into a relationship. And so anyway, yeah, that's what.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways that we can block that opportunity of reception, right? And you know, we're at this time in astrology where so much of this ancient information is coming back, or the kind of interest in the ancient. And
Mhm.
it, like the potential pitfall is it can lead towards an absolute schism
Yeah.
of modern versus traditional, right? And we see that debate happening, like,
Yeah.
but it really is promoting the opportunity of a great renaissance of kind of remembering our roots, and also honoring that the places that we've branched to since then, like, also have purpose. And
Yeah.
and then finding how these things come together so we can kind of meet in the middle way, right? And so that's why I love when I see like folks who were in the evolutionary paradigm, like kind of go back as you have, or folks
Mhm.
who were in the traditional paradigm say, oh, well, maybe there's actually something in this. And, so I think we'll see more and more of it. And I think that's actually opening up the channel for where we are in this moment. But it's really hard not to be that ignorant but judgmental. Like I exalt in that space personally. And then that kind of slams the door on some levels, but also it opens it, right? Because we
Yeah,
can't open every door, or there's
exactly.
just, especially in this world, it's just information overload. And so many different paradigms that absolutely contradict. It can be hard to like hold a space for each of them. So,
Yeah.
that discernment is really crucial. But
Yeah.
I know, like, recently you've now, and through your Ayurvedic studies, also been looking at Vedic astrology, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
with a totally different zodiac, I imagine.
Yeah. It's been really interesting to, yeah, because I don't know if 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have been able to come into like learning about Jyotish in such a childish manner. Just like I feel like like I ended up learning so much about so-called Western astrology that I was like, oh, okay, cool. I know that like I'm a timeless student. Like I always have been that, but like actually being like, I'm never going to learn all this stuff. And that feels really, really good. And it feels fun actually on like even more grounded level. And going into Jyotish, I really have like allowed my mind to just be blank as possible. Now there's some stuff that I can't just like I have to like ask extra questions just so I make sure I'm like really differentiating between the two. And when I'm hearing like being able to really hear my teacher, but I just feel so fresh in it. And to like be a baby pup in one form of astrology, but then also being of service to so many people in another form is just something about it just feels, yeah, it feels really humbling on a level of I feel really confident and strong. And also I feel really open and childish. It's been amazing because, like you said, I am in school right now for Ayurveda too to become an Ayurvedic practitioner. And so I am just getting like this snippet of the intro to Jyotish or Vedic astrology. And right after that, I got that little snippet. I moved into what they call Ayur Jyotish program, which is like basically it's Vedic medical astrology. And both of them is just the intros. And so it feels good to be able to compare and contrast between the two, but also knowing that one day like these two things are as well like will synthesize in like in an embodied way for me. And something about that feels, yeah, it feels really good. And I do feel, yeah, I just keep feeling like, I don't know, in this conversation, like humble is the word I keep feeling. And it's reminding me of what my teacher Prashanti says, one of my Ayurvedic teachers and yoga teachers. He always says the greatest medicine is the medicine maker being made into medicine. And that's what it feels like, right? Like it just feels like, okay, I'm learning this new thing, I have this old thing, and then just like I'm just learning how to like make medicine and be medicine throughout all of these processes. And that in of itself is, yeah, it's what I'm here for. And I'm also in movement school right now, and I'm also in another yoga program right now. And so all these things don't feel separate anymore. And that feels so good to me. Like so good. Yeah.
So this image came in, which was Cameron Allen and the Caduceus Staff. And I sent that over to you and you're like, yes. What did you see in that moment? Or let me just put this out there, Caduceus Staff.
Yeah.
Share.
Yeah. It was just, you know, I had just started doing this one Kundalini yoga practice I used to do all the time. And that automatically makes me think of like the Ida and Pingala. For people who don't know, there's a right channel and a left channel, let's call it. And then there's a central channel. And the left and the right channel are said to swirl around the middle channel. And it is the caduceus, essentially, right? And then thinking about like the symbol of medicine is the caduceus, right? And then astrology, you know, we got the patron of astrology, Mercury, and he carries the caduceus. And so all these things, I'm like, this just makes sense. Like all these things belong together. And in the past, they have belonged together. And I have been on this piece by piece pursuit of like, how do all these things come together? And I feel like I'm like reaching like a state of maturation or like a next level of, I don't need to informationally know as much as I used to think that I did. And I can feel it and I can taste it and I can hear it and I can smell it. And it's just something that, like, for me, I'm like, it's just weaving together inside of me. Like, and so, yeah, when you wrote that, I was like, yes, period, because I had just put up this shelf that is like over here to my left and it has all my Ayurvedic. It's the first time I've like started stocking Ayurvedic herbs and started making paste and different preparations. And so it was like, I had just finished putting it up and then you sent that to me and it was just like, this is an absolute yes, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's that piece of the caduceus, right, where we often see it kind of blossoming into the wings, right? And it really feels like kind of the higher chakras and that like conscious flight that can happen. But, you know, we see it in Hermes' hand so often, but it feels to me like it should also have like the roots of a tree. Right.
Yeah.
And that's like, for me, that's one of my images of Cameron Allen. Right. That's like, right, this like kind of like rooted caduceus blossoming. And I think it's so important for us to, you know, remember as we're kind of branching into the heavens and reaching for the stars that we're like rooted into this place that we're coming from, and that like the nutrients in the soil, or even when, you know, when the soil and the youth in the home has no nutrients at all, like that's a whole part of how we are growing, branching, and growing fruits to offer back to earth. Yeah. So that's another piece I feel that you've been receptive to, and that I've witnessed, you know, kind of change you and shift you over the last years, and heard you speak some about it, but it's like your connection to the ancestors.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Before we even go into that, first of all, you almost just made me cry on video. So thank you for
That's
that.
what I'm here for.
And then I forgot, but in like I have a picture of the top of the caduceus with the wings specifically right here on my chest too. And I got that in college because one day I came back from a party again and I like looked in the mirror and I didn't have any tattoos on my chest at that time. And I saw it on my chest. And 2 weeks later, I like went and got that tattoo. So I just wanted to share that
Wow.
because it's
When
like,
you were a gym bro, or what?
yeah, when I was at gym, bro, it was like it start like that's how most of my tattoos came. Actually, I just could see them in the mirror in random
Wow.
times. But yeah, so that's like,
So who's showing you that when you
I don't
see a
know.
tattoo on your body in the reflection?
Like I have to reflect on that because you know those things would happen and I would just not think. I would see it and just be like, that looks good, you know, like in such a broish way. I'm like, oh yeah, that was so cool. It was like just super cool back then. But that I like that question, and I'm so surprised that I haven't even explored that. I'm gonna have to sink into that soon, actually. Yeah. So
What would
thanks for
other
that.
gym bros say when you showed up with like Caduceus on your chest. I forgot about that tattoo on you, but yeah.
Well, I was like, they would just tell me that I was weird, which, based off of that culture, I was, right? Like, it was like before football practice, I would be like studying like what type of protein shake to get, not even in like a necessarily bro-ish way, but like why should you pick this protein from a chemical perspective, and then go to football practice. And at the end of football practice, like I had like a skincare routine because my mom is she sold Mary Kay my whole life. And so I never like picked up on like as a male, I shouldn't take care of myself, And so like there was always these little things that like I was already weird. So like getting tattoos like that was like the least of my weirdness to my to my football player friends, So yeah, there wasn't that much of a response really, to be honest. They would just be like, oh, here go Cameron again type of thing. Yeah, I definitely got more stuff about the skincare thing than the tattoos for sure. Yeah. But yeah, the ancestors. Oh, yeah, that's been such a pivotal shift in like what's been going on in my life over the last year and a half too as well. There's only one temple for the Sangomas, and the Sangomas, they come from South Africa, the Bantu tradition, and there's only one temple in the United States, and I just so happened to have meet the person who runs the temple like 2.5 years ago.
Wow, how'd you meet?
We met through, I think there was like a summit I was on, and she was, and one of her friends was at the summit, and we just so happened to like be talking in the chat, and I was just like, I need to talk to you. I don't know why I need to talk to you. And so like we just connected, and like even last spring I went out to the temple, and it was like the end of like I actually went through like a process, like the first rites, the first level of the rites of passage in the Sangoma tradition. And so that's just been like monumental change, like my ability to be quiet really at the end of the day has like significantly increased in my life. Just like being able to be quiet and also like let things come out of my body. Like it's so interesting because like when I reflect these things to people that know me, they're like, oh yeah, you've always been that way. And I'm like, no, this is not the same. Like it's like way different now. It's like the intelligence of my body is guiding me so much more. Like before I was like, I want to get in my body and let's be embodied. But now it's like the intelligence of my body is like guiding me. And yeah, that's been one of the biggest things that has come. Oh yeah. That's been one of the biggest things that has like changed since I've been in connection with the ancestors. Even talking about the Caduceus, and like DNA, and how that also like is like an image that I'm seeing in my head right now. Yeah, there's so much more I could say there, but well, one more thing I will say is that there was a maybe like an 8-month period of time while I was going through that initiation process where I was starting to also change the story or notice the differences in stories of the lunar nodes, right? Whereas in evolutionary astrology, they would say past life and like where you're going or that kind of thing going on there. And what was being brought to me, through my ancestors, they were just like asking me to consider people's lineage and asking me to consider the teachings that I was receiving about identity and how in our tradition identity starts with environment, and then it starts with parents, and then it goes to like all these other things, and that is my identity. It's not like me, right? And how I started being able to see that in charts, it was like an 8-month period of time where it's like I couldn't even help it. There was like these things coming through about the North Node and the South Node and how it had to do with identity of the ancestors, and the moon was like kind of like how the person was experiencing or how all that was coalescing into personal identity. And it was like really beautiful and profound. And I wish I would have wrote more stuff down about it, because it actually, like, as I went away from that initiation process, it was as if it started kind of just going back to all the teachings that I've had from like astrology proper, of the nodes and stuff like that. But yeah, during that time, it was like really fascinating. And I was just fascinated with the ancestors too. So I was looking at like the triplicity, the second triplicity, Lord of the eighth house, and looking at the fourth house a lot different during that time period. And yeah, so the ancestors have like changed everything about the foundation of how I think about things, you know, just receiving those teachings. And also, again, like, I think, okay, I'm glad you asked this, because now I'm seeing, like, when I was saying earlier about being humble, that's what it was. Because when you're going through the process of initiation, at this stage, it wasn't as intense, but like, you know, there's like bowing and like, you know, and so it's like I would be at the herb shop and helping people, and like a lot of times I wouldn't be allowed to touch people, and I would have to like bow before I like engage with people. And then at the next level, there's like even more of things like that. And so, yeah, okay, that's what it was. It wasn't just, yeah, it was the humbling process of putting my knee and my head to the ground in like in reverence of like the soil, the dirt, my flesh, your flesh, the how precious it is to actually be able to look somebody in their eye when you can't do it for 3 months period of time. You know, like things like that. It just have like really brought me to like a really humble space. So yeah, anyway, Brett, thank
So when
you
you went
so much. Thank you
to
so much, because you're really like, yeah, like I feel like a lot of different times like coalescing in me right now, and it like feels really, yeah, I'm really, thank you.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so when you went to study with Pythagoras, you had to take a 7-year vow of silence.
Whoa.
Can you imagine that?
Whoa.
Like
No.
you don't get to see him until like well after that period, which is intriguing. Like
Whoa.
we'll never really know. But I've often, just from the sacred astronomy side, you know, and I love teaching astronomy to astrologers, and helping us remember that this isn't just about like maps and charts, right? That, you know, it's here, it's real. But like I'll call the moon snaking above and below the path of the sun, right? So like crossing at the lunar nodes, right? Kind of serpentine, dragon's head and dragon's tail, like one of the Caduceus Staffs of Hermes. And then the other one being the ecliptic, kind of snaking north and south of the equator. But it's really like, you know, we have that's the signs, the tropical signs anyway, right? And then the moon's thing going like around the ecliptic, that's already doing that, and you get this kind of Caducean thing happening, you know. But it's like the DNA, right? As you were mentioning that before, it's like, yeah, well, where's the head and the feet of the DNA, right? But it's not there. It's like it's cyclical. It's the Taurus and that whole scene. All right. Well, where does this want to go? You know, I want to actually retrograde back to, you were just saying when we came on, I can't remember if you said this after we went live or before, but how like all the mutable energy has had weird things happening, including like your foot going through some glass. And yeah, it can be really helpful then to have the astrology to kind of support the why behind, you know, some of the traumas that happen and whatnot. But do you see that in the chart now? And if you do, does that mean you also see kind of an understanding of the why, and maybe a way out or a way for healing?
Yeah, absolutely. It was telling me to sit down, honestly. You know, like I was working on a running program for some men that I've been working with. You know, it's just like, you know, men that like had run in their past, and they were just like having problems with like getting injured basically in the run, like in their like running, and feeling like, oh, I just don't run anymore because of this and that. And so I was like formulating a program, and I was being a little too intense about it, because I was like wanting to get it done and get it out for them and stuff like that. And they're in the planets were just like, slow down, my child. Let the energy and the information coalesce. And in that process, I actually made more. In that process, I made more progress by like, you know, the injuries happening. I had to slow down, and then I went back into my old anatomy books from college and like really started being like meticulous about how I want this program to kind of unfold. And so yeah, the challenge and the difficulty like blossomed forth some like really good nuggets of data collection information. I also started making like a little side presentation on how to work with I guess people call it like patellar tendonitis, but really we would classify as patellar tendinopathy now, because we know so much more about it, and it's not really just about the inflammation. Anyway, I won't go there right now, but it just led me to a lot of different things, a lot of information that I like. Everything would have been fine if I didn't have it, but it just let me sink deeper into that. And so, yeah, that was the gift of the curse of injury. The gift was knowledge and experience. Yeah.
In your practice, are you often seeing clients who might have like a kind of a chronic injury or something that has been with them since youth, and then sourcing it in the chart and finding ways through and out?
Only recently has it been in the way of like seeing chronic issues in the chart and then working like with movement practices and stuff like that. Before it was like herbs and like maybe a few stretches, but I wasn't like focusing on the movement piece of it. But yeah, it's usually pretty apparent in the chart when somebody has like, because people are bringing it to me and it's already something that's been chronic, and so it's usually very apparent, to be honest. And I've been figuring out lately too that I once was a little bit maybe overemphasizing the signs for the locality of the body, but some of the chronic things, they really do just belong to Saturn and Mars in the aspects to them in the chart, and like the other body position, the other parts of the body that the other planets rule. When there's an aspect from Saturn or from Mars, oftentimes it's like it is that simple. It can be more complicated if someone isn't working with all the different modalities that I am. So let me say that. But it becomes very simple, and I'm like, I don't want to look at a progress chart. I don't want to look at solar return, perfection. I'm like, I just want us to sit here and have this conversation around what you've been going through throughout your life, and how that might correspond to your emotions, how that might correspond to how you think about this. And now we're going to go into a process, where we start to move the body in certain ways while we hold that information of the feelings, hold that information of the thoughts. And now we're going to like let our body start to like be the intelligent part of us that lets us remember health beyond what we've concretized it as in our mind and in our feelings. And so it's been like a really beautiful unraveling. And I do just let the chart kind of instruct me on that, from like a little, and in yoga practice, we would call it a drishti, but it's really just gazing. I would just, because, we do the practices of like just staring at candle flames for a long time. And after that, like I started to learn to just gaze at the chart and then let the chart like give me the information. And so that's kind of like the practice that I've been newly like bringing forth to people that I'm working with a little longer term. It's like it requires people to work with me for 3 months or more for me to go there. But it's been really beautiful, and it's been like just unfolding.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. I mean, it's like the difference between reading a chart and seeing it, right? And just receiving it. And I mean, I can get like caught up sometimes in my practice where, somebody's like describing their job and I'm like, well, where is that here? Because so often, people are just telling me what they're doing. I was like, okay, it's just this and this and this and this. And wow, this thing's about to happen there. So I bet you that job's changing now, and whatever. And then sometimes I'm just like, hey, what? Yeah. Right. And I get so lost in my like need to like solve the thing that I'm no longer with the person.
Yeah, bro.
And then it's like, boom, like that's like this ring. It's just like, boom, it just will smack me. Like, no, like, because my first mantra is heart before chart. And I mean, I spend so much time with astrology students and with other professional astrologers in session, which is cool. I mean, I'm sure you do it often. It's like, it's a kind of different session, you know what I mean? But still, it's like, even there, like, instead of sharing all this about technique, and why not just, when the heart opens, like, put the screen away and be in that space, you know? And I think, like, that's the roots of the Caduceus, right? It's like, we have to remember that we're in bodies with hearts, that the holy water is the tears, you know? When people like apologize for crying in a session, and you're just quick to like, no, please, like, that's the juice. Like, that's what
exactly.
I remember yesterday I was in session with a woman and I started crying. It's just like, I just want to share that I'm crying right now. And like, you know, it's like, sometimes that happens, right? It's like, I think important for us to have like solid boundaries in counseling, but at other times, like, you know, we're talking about the human dynamic and kind of like these threads that we all share, and that we all go through it in different ways, but it's kind of sourced in the same space, you know?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, like, we, especially in 2024, we forget that boundaries are actually made for connection, not for war. Like, you know, and like, sometimes when we say boundary, when people say boundary, what they really mean is, you should have a wall, you know, which a wall separates. And that's not what I'm looking to do when I'm reading a chart or seeing a chart or being with a chart or being with a person. I'm not trying to create any walls really in some way, shape, or form. But boundaries make it so that we can have a connection, and I can be over here and you can be over there. But it's the point where we are together. And so I think that's a beautiful reflection, and it's important for us to remember that.
Yeah, there's a thing in music, it's called the difference note, which is trippy. And it has to do with harmonics, and it's really deep, and it has an astrological correspondent, but I'll have to like get the glasses back on and go too far nerdy to like really talk about it. But just as an example, like, I can like play my saxophone at a cymbal and get the cymbal resonating, like, depending on like where, like, what note I play has to like kind of harmonize with or resonate with wherever that cymbal is tuned to. But then once that cymbal gets going, or I could just like, I can play a saxophone note, another saxophonist can play a note, we just hold that, a third note will appear in the room.
Whoa.
It's a trip. And it, you like, you have to really be in it, like, together. It's better with another person, but it's like kind of twice as hard, but like 20 times as profound when it goes down. Like, it sounds like there's another person in the room playing this like low ohm. And it's just like, for me, that's just what I heard when you were just sharing about like having good boundaries. Like, yo, that's your saxophone, this is mine. But when we come together and harmonize, like, there's a ghost in the room. Like, there's like that thing that we're accessing like together, and not even like necessarily creating together, although that's amazing, right? But like the source of creation that brought us together, like when we get into that place in the session, that's when like the real, you know, I want to call it work, but it's kind of like where the real play gets done, right? Where we start moving through things quickly. And yeah, I agree, it's really nice when you're connecting with the same person frequently, right? Because you can kind of start traveling through story and kind of like not get that out of the way, but like use that as the vehicle to go into like deeper spaces. And I wanted to also value like what you, like, as you were speaking to the fourth house before, I think we can really lose the houses and the places, right? Or even seeing like the feet as Pisces instead of the feet as the 12th house, right? Like, it has so much to do with where you're born on earth. Like, signs are about like they're measured from the center of the earth, like that's you know, the whole, but the house is from the surface, that's particular, right? And we need to work with both, but sometimes we lose that in just like sign-based astrology, which is so profound and beautiful in its archetypal expression. But like, we've kind of lost in a lot of the modern astrology, which can so commonly have this sign-based or even like, you know, like nodal focus, like the importance of the places, you know? And like, when we disconnect the chart from the sky, and importantly, like heaven and hell, you know, or whatever we want to call that place, like the heavens beneath our feet. We forget that the fourth is like deep, right, and buried, and like, you know, some of the traditions you well know, it's like the ascendant is youth, and then here's midlife and the elder years, and this is the tomb and the womb from which we rise again. And so much of that kind of lineage and depth, like as we just started, I just cast a chart, like Pluto was right at the bottom of the chart here, not in Memphis where you are when we started, but it's like, oh yeah, like this is going to go deep, you know, and that's cool because I can imagine a better partner to go travel into the depths with. But yeah, let me ask this, I guess, what have you found in the evolution of your understanding of the fourth house during the course of your astrological journey?
Sometimes I would say when I'm doing the readings, like I was saying, during that 8-month period, I would just find the ancestors there. And something else too, you know, I forget what they called it, but there's like in some, I forget the source of it, but they talk about like the fourth house being a place of like household spirits or something like that. And you know, I contemplated that for maybe like, it was maybe like 2-month period. I was just like contemplating, what are household spirits? What are household spirits? And I remember I was like down like by my house at like a park, and I was contemplating it, and then I turn around, and then just a bunch of like fireflies just like come up, and they're just like playing, like very playful. And it was just like, it just landed on me that like our relationship, like literally with the earth here right now in our local space, is like what's going on in the fourth house oftentimes too. Like if like there's a transit going, or like rather when the perfection is in the fourth place, oftentimes I have invited people as like either like relationship building or like remediation to like be with the land in a certain type of way that corresponds with the planet that rules that year. So let's say like it's Venus, right? Then it's just like in your like, I don't know, you can use a 2-block radius, or you can go to the park around you and just like build a relationship with the land and let it be like that thing that's helping guide you throughout this year. And that's something that has been like really, really profound. Like I've seen people change, they change a lot. And even one person I was working with, and we were doing some other stuff too with their nervous system, and like just learning like to identify what states their nervous system are in, things like that. And they were coming from a place of a strong place of, I need other people for this and that, and like as much as that's true, you know, it was not available to them. And so they started realizing like the people of the land, right? The people being the plants around them, the people being the squirrels around them, and not the people being the persons, but like really like being in relationship with the land in a way that was like so healing. And they felt like they were connected, and they felt like they were more resourced just by being in relationship with the land in that way. And it was like, to me, it just makes me feel like we have to actually like put our head in our hands down towards the earth for the subterranean place to come up and give us a kiss. And so that's what I feel like is the most significant transmission that I've received from the fourth house that hasn't been like direct information.
Yes. I'm just remembering as you share that, one of my favorite kind of sky ceremonies I've held was it, Orcas Island. Yeah, I was speaking at the Imagine Festival, which is a really wonderful music and spirituality festival in Orcas Island, typically in September. Friends, if you're up in that neck of the woods, go. Held and created by just beautiful people. But one year there was a solar eclipse, and I guess we couldn't see it there. But anyway, this one, it was a total lunar eclipse, but we were on like the exact opposite side of Earth from where it was happening. I mean, the cool thing about a lunar eclipse is like if it's dark and the clouds allow, you can see it, right? Like if it's nighttime, then the full moon's above the ground. and you get to see the eclipse. And I love when lunar eclipses happen because we get these images from like all over the world these days in the web.
Yeah.
And, you know, all these different people having different experiences of the same thing. But anyway, it was happening at like midday. So we were like on the exact opposite side of the world from where to see this, right? So I led these people into going to see it. And what we did is we sat with our back to the sun. And I was drumming and kind of speaking through this meditation. And I had everyone travel their shadow through the center of the earth to the sky on the other side. And for some of them, we had been out the night before, and I kind of showed them the stars where the moon would be during the eclipse. And so I asked them to kind of contemplate or like see that in their awareness, right? But like we went into the heart of the earth and then out through the other side. And since then, it's been really important for me to like, if I want to connect with the nature of the 5th house, I'll go out when the sun's in the 11th and do the shadow work, right? Because the shadow points to the 5th, the sun's in the 11th. Or, you know, when the moon's casting shadow and the moon's in the 11th, I can go journey into the 5th, especially a full moon. The sun will be in the 5th at that time. You know, you really get to learn about the nature of the 5th and why traditionally it's the joy of Venus and passion. But anyway, why this came in for me is, I can't remember the signs. I think it was one of those tetrads of the Aries Libra eclipses in that 2014-15 zone. But we were just like, we went down into the 4th house and kind of popped through the other side. And so many people were having ancestral remembrances and experiencing the spirits of the land. And why this really came in is somebody like saw like the old man of a particular tree that was there. And so, yeah, when you say like the spirits of the home, and it's like a weird place. I didn't mean to ask you about the 4th house today, but here we are, right? That, yeah, it's not just like your ancestors and your ancestors' ancestors and the people who have been on this land, and it is that, right? But it's like those fireflies who are kind of the expression of something deep, right? And it's the marriage of heaven and earth, and it really is like the roots of the tree, right, where the branches are coming up onto the opposite side, the 10th house side. Yeah, well, thanks for helping me remember that. It's like good with Mercury in his last moments of a retrograde to do a little time machining and reflect.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was in the Mercury retrograde is like conjunct my south node, and yeah, that was brought out really, really lovely. Yeah.
It's been moving through my 4th, depending on how you draw the lines. But this morning I had somebody in one of the comments here wrote like Mars is so red right now, and yeah, that will only increase as the sun goes to oppose Mars eventually. We get closer and closer to Mars. But I had Mars is on my moon right now, my natal moon, and moon was on my Mars. And so I like went out to be with that, and it just brought me into like really early years, you know. I mean, I'm fathering a baby here now, and I'm sure that's some of it. But I mean, I had memories, or I think I did, or created memories of like a time before memory, you know what I mean? It was trippy. And I was like, oh yeah, like Mercury's dancing through my 4th too. And there's something about kind of going back to the depths, back to the roots. And I think practices of remembrance can be very helpful when the 4th opens up too.
Big time.
As they say, like 12th is hidden things, but the 4th is suppressed things.
Yeah. It's like the 12th is like hidden in the background in a subtle way, and the 4th house is hidden like underneath or like in the deep past in some way.
The things that we put under the rug, or you know, the things we were told not to talk about or not to remember, or, you know. Yeah. Well, what's going on in the 4th house where you are right now? I'm wondering why this is happening to us. I got Scorpio rising. Mercury retrograde is at the midheaven. I'm going to relocate this thing to Memphis and take a peek.
Yeah, I got Neptune pretty close to the 4th house. So it's at 24 degrees Pisces right now is the 4th house. We got Sagittarius rising at 10 degrees.
Yeah, and Saturn down there at the
Right.
bottom.
Yeah, Saturn's like right there too. Yeah.
It's fun to see this chart and see Venus, Neptune. All right, so I think maybe this will also be the place for us to wrap.
Yeah, well,
Because I think in this Virgo Venus opposite Pisces Neptune, and just the Virgo nature anyway, which like I hope that it can unfold. Like I was looking this morning at a Cancer moon, right? But I'm seeing her because she's reflecting Virgo light to my eyes.
mm-hmm.
And when I think about that kind of combination in that medicine, there's like the nurturing that can result from the yoga or from like the sacred systems,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, and these sacred practices of healing and like the Sun Mercury mutual thing and all the stuff that's happening right now. And like I see a lot of that medicine in you, like it's part of how I know you. But I guess, yeah, we can get so lost in the system that we lose the heart and forget to do the caring piece first.
Absolutely.
Or it can be just like that chart, like when you stop reading it and start seeing it, right? And you lead with that thing that had people come into Papa Cam out under the stars in the first place, right? It's like you can learn all of these different sacred sciences that's use different zodiacs, house systems, modalities, routes, whatever, and it starts to come together. And as it does, it's like your medicine, your wisdom opens up. And so one thing I've been really fascinated by, not surprised by, but still fascinated, I think that's okay, is to see like this body of knowledge that's coming through you that's like as old as it gets, but also brand new.
Yeah.
And I just want to honor that in you right now. And I'm very excited to have the privilege to witness it and experience it and to know that so many people are too. So I just want to, even before I forget this, to share your website with folks here. A bunch of people in the comments, I put a couple up talking about the profound readings they've had with you in the past, not
Wow.
too distant past too. But you can find Cameron at cadreamplanet.com. Put that over here on the Instagram side too. You can hear why you should already, but track him down. You're taking clients now, right?
Yeah, I'm taking clients and I'm doing like also I have an offering for like a 3-month like personal development mentorship thing, which includes if people want to learn more about synthesizing different forms of astrology, if people want to learn how astrology goes with movement, or like they're like, well, in Ayurveda we call it the dinacharya, like the daily routines, or like, and also something I've been really trying to promote people to be mindful of is like preventative ways to interface with medical astrology instead of it being like the last resort for a lot of people. And then also, like, even if you just find my email address, like, because if you have like a hip problem or a low back problem or like a knee problem, like incorporating like people's chart into it, that has been like really amazing. Like that's been like my like specialty over the last like 3 months. Like the amount of people that thought they were on the road to like needing a new hip, like, and like they can, not that they're like, oh great now, but it's like they're the way they're going in a new direction with intelligence and understanding has been like amazing. So just also want to bring voice to that. Also I'm doing a 5-week course with Nadia Shah starting in September, and so you can find that on my link tree if you go to my Instagram. I have it in my, let me see if I can, if you go to synchronicityuniversity.com, yeah, go to my Instagram and it'll be there for sure.
What is your Instagram handle?
CA Dream 6.
CA Dream 6, like SIX?
No, 6, the number 6, just the number 6 straight up.
Okay, got it. Cool.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So CA Dream 6 on Instagram, CA Dream Planet. And yeah, you know, I'm looking at this wedge. It's like Virgo Venus opposite Pisces Neptune with Uranus like connecting in the through. And it just feels like the kind of revelations of the body of sacred systems that can offer gigantic healing. And yeah, that's what you are in my book. And I'm really happy to share a world with you.
Same. And I look forward to being able to give you a hug and seeing you in person again soon, brother.
You know, we have a room for you anytime. We can't wait for you to meet the baby and see you. And, you know, Isabel, our pup's excited to see you anytime also. So, hey, thanks for spending some time here with me, Cameron. Folks, I hope you go check out Cameron's work. And I look forward to seeing you in space and on Earth sometime, man.
Indeed. Much love.
All right. Peace, Cameron.
Peace.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for the present of your presence. Thanks for joining us here. Please like the video, share it around. Help spread the love. Help us defeat the algorithm. All right. Peace, y'all.